Well, Dave and I were in Ontario for a wedding. It was early June, and we took the kids to my parents' cottage in Georgian Bay. And at that time, when the kids were little, my mom had this list of rules. It was on a poster behind the fireplace. And they were mostly safety concerns, things about running on the rocks or life jackets or sunscreen. But they also included a few rules about no whining and no saying that you're bored. And so our girls came into the cottage and they read the rules. And Molly, who was 8, said, "What happens when you break the rules?" "What? Why would you? What kind of question is that?" And Molly just may indeed grow up to be a lawyer herself. But as always, it is about how you read the rules. It's always about interpretation. The lawyer in the beginning of this passage from Luke asks Jesus the same kind of demanding question. So it's not about what's written in the law, but how you read it. And the question today is, who really is my neighbor? And Jesus responds faithfully and brilliantly with a story about service and compassion, and then commissions us as listeners to go out and do likewise. We, as the church, are supposed to finish this story on and on, go and do likewise for the rest of our lives. Now, John Wesley, besides his excellent directions for singing, which is found on page 720 of Voices United, also gave the church these words: "Do all the good you can by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, in all the times you can, to all the people you can, for as long as ever you can." Let's agree that Wesley loved the story of the Good Samaritan. Last week there was a car accident in front of Shaughnessy. It was 9 o'clock in the morning, and we heard the accident, but we didn't see the accident. And Dave went out on the street. It was raining, and made sure everyone was all right. The police were called, and we opened the church up so that they could get out of the rain while they were waiting for family and emergency vehicles to come. And accidents are like the mountaintops and the depths of the valley, the highs and the lows, and it's kind of a study of human behavior. There was this one man, he was actually the man whose car had been hit and damaged the most, and he was completely gracious, non-anxious. He was this calm presence in this turbulent time, and it was amazing to actually witness such grace in a time of such upheaval. Glennon Doyle has written about this parable, and she suggests that the ones who crossed to the other side of the street to avoid contact and engagement might simply have been on their way to do something important and meaningful and urgent in their own lives. They simply could not slow down or stop. They had commitments and needed to be somewhere else. The priest and the Levite then are not bad people, just busy people. Just as it was in the accident last week, the traffic on 33rd never slowed down for this accident. People were already 5 minutes late and were just whizzing by. The Levite and the priest had people to see and places to be. And in the strictest interpretation of the law, even their shadow could not touch that which was contaminated, or they would have to take time to offer prayers of ritual cleansing. Talk about systemic failure. They were too preoccupied and bound to the code of conduct of this ritual purity to even be allowed to notice if the man was dead or alive. So what keeps you from loving your neighbor? About 10 years ago, on a shockingly cold February day in Saskatoon, I had a funeral that included a graveside. It was roughly minus 45. It was dangerously cold, and it was a difficult kind of funeral with very little thanksgiving, lots of trauma, lots of brokenness and pain. And as we were outside at the graveside, I actually had to kind of pull a woman off the casket in front of her children and explain that it was just too cold of a day for this. When I finally got home, which felt like 3 days of work, I knew that I wasn't ready for family time just yet, so I decided to go for a short walk. I took the dog that we were minding for my oldest son, and it was about 4:30 in the afternoon. I got bundled up to head out. Fur hat, good boots, down coat, gloves. The doggy had a coat on too. I was just gonna go for a short walk. But I was about 50 meters from home when I was struck by a car. It didn't stop for the crosswalk, and the young driver on this 4-lane road pulled out from behind a stopped car and hit us right in the center of the intersection. The good news was I didn't even see it coming. I don't remember being hit or flying through the air. I woke up on the ground wondering where I was and what happened. I could see the dog. She had rolled down the street away from me, but I could not get to her. And I thought the cemetery that afternoon was cold, but lying in the middle of a street when the sun is going down is even colder. All I do remember are the two people who abandoned their cars, left their own lives and their busyness behind to come and comfort me. A woman cradled my head with her body. She spoke such kind and loving things to me, and she assured me that the dog would be okay and that help was coming. She said everyone is going to be fine, and she promised not to leave me. An older man, like old, got down on the road and said, "I have a phone, who can I call?" And I pointed to my house and said that my family was inside. He went right over and knocked on the door. I was mostly concerned about the dog, not about myself. And around this time, Dave was coming home from work, and he had to take a detour because of the emergency vehicles. And he looked over on the street and thought, wow, it looks like somebody was hit by a car. And then he saw my coat, and he was like, oh my gosh, it's my wife. Dave and the kids then took the dog to the university vet clinic, and she was okay. And I like to say nothing $1,000 couldn't fix. I went by myself to City Hospital for x-rays and get checked out, and just bruises and pain. We were very fortunate. But here's the thing. The next day, as I was convalescing on the sofa in the living room, both of those people came to my door. The woman came with a bone for the dog and a bag of Epsom salts for me. And the man came just to see how we were. My son handled the door both times, and both times I cried for the tenderness and the love that had freely been given to me by those strangers. I never really saw their faces. I could not pick them out of a lineup. They didn't know who I was or what I did for a living. They didn't say, how did you get yourself on the street in the dark, in the cold? Don't you know how to cross the street? What were you thinking? There was no victim blaming or shaming, just loving support. Did they stop because they knew this story of the Good Samaritan? Did they stop because they were religious people? I have no idea. Did they stop because loving and serving others at the best and worst of times confirms our humanity and our giftedness as God's people? Maybe. We didn't become Facebook friends. They didn't adopt me or come again the next day. No unhealthy, weird, codependent relationship formed. I never saw them again. They loved me and served me when I needed it. They ensured my safety and moved on with their own lives. They offered enough to affirm my dignity as a neighbor, and that was it. Now, there are reasons and barriers that keep us on the other side of the street. There's safety issues. There's personal ability. There's the reality of complicated situations, and there's also issues about comfort level. These are all real concerns and legit conditions that prevent us from loving and serving others. At the end of the day, I wonder if the priest and the Levite thought about that person lying in the ditch. Did they remember them in their prayers? Did they give extra offerings at the temple coffers so that all in need may receive support? Did they vow to leave a little more time in their day in the future so that they would be able to be a blessing to others? Direct service is not for everyone, and so we advocate. We advocate, we study, we give, we learn, we make eye contact, and we smile warmly and pray. We are called to love and serve others, to offer enough of what we can. I slept and I dreamt that all life is joy. Then I woke and I saw that all life is service. Then I served and I saw that service is joy. Now I think about Molly's question, what happens when you don't follow the rules? I don't think we said it then, but if she asked me again today, I would say, then you won't have as much fun. You could get hurt, you could get a sunburn, you would sit in a chair whining or feeling bored. It robs us from our joy. What happens when you don't take the advice of Jesus about who your neighbor is? When you don't, can't, or won't love one another? It robs us of our joy. We fail to live abundantly with all that entails. Serving others breaks down the tyranny of self-interest. It frees us and teaches us to be for the other. The reason we should love our neighbor, the alien, the stranger, is always the same. Because I am the Lord your God. Love the stranger because God. Not because God says to, but because God loves them. God adores and loves your neighbor, even when you do not. God desires us to move toward one another in love. In this time of social distancing and careful contact, when we are not engaged in all the acts of service that give life to the church, maybe we should drag all the treasures that we house in our sanctuaries, drag them out to the front lawn and put up a sign that says, for free. What a beloved jumble sale that would be. And I'm not talking about candlesticks or books or comfortable pews, but what is it that you treasure most about Christian community? What is it that you treasure, and how is it we could give that away? How can we love and serve others using all that we have and all that we value most about our faith, especially today in this time that we're in? Now, there may be a day when you don't have the luxury of a choice. You may neither be the busy priest or the dedicated Levite. You may not even be the innkeeper who offered respite for money. Like me, you could be the one broken and lying on the road, waiting there as God's precious, beloved child, called to be redeemed and made whole. I invite you to be the ones who have mercy and go and do likewise. Amen.